Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today, we will be counting down my top 25 coasters for 2024. So let's just jump right into this. At the beginning of this year, I completely tore down my old top 25 list from last year and rebuilt it up over the year as I rerode coasters. So, some things may be moved around, actually a pretty decent amount. So up in the corner, one of the corners, I don't know which, I will have how far down or up a coaster moved. And this list is, of course, just my opinions. But let's start off with two honorable mentions, those being Wild Eagle and Twisted Timbers. Wild Eagle is a B&M wing coaster located at Dollywood. The coaster is very smooth and a fun wing coaster with nice graceful maneuvers, but it's tame, and that's what keeps it from being higher. Then you have the opposite in Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion. The ride is crazy and out of control. It is like a mini Steel Vengeance, with crazy amounts of ejector airtime and laterals, but the trains aren't the best and the ride is a little repetitive. Now, starting off the top 25, at number 25, we have Texas Stingray at SeaWorld San Antonio. This is a crazy GCI Woodie and was my 200th credit. The ride doesn't have a ton of ejector airtime, only a few pops, but the whole course has crazy laterals, the trains are comfortable, and I like the theming, plus the ride is very smooth, but still has some of the bumpiness of a wooden coaster. And it's just a small but fun ride. Next up, at number 24, we have Batman the Ride at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. I know everyone will call me crazy, but I absolutely loved this SNS 40 Freespin. The ride is so out of control and a different ride experience every time. It has some great somersaulting sensations through the whole whippy ride. It may be short, but it's a literal ball of fun. At number 23, we have Boulder Dash at Lake Compounce. I rode this CCI Terrain Woodie when the first portion of Titan Track had been installed on the drop. So I haven't ridden it since more has been installed, but the ride was glass smooth on the drop and then rough everywhere else. But the roughness made the ride fit into the woods, as it really felt like you were an out-of-control rock tearing through the woods and the mountainside. The first drop has no airtime, but the whole time you are mashed to the left side of the train. Then the coaster flies up on the mountain with a bunch of laterals and airtime before it makes the return trip alongside one of the paths in the park with a run of ejector airtime hills, and the train is just absolutely flying throughout the whole course. The roughness is just what keeps the ride from getting higher. Although it adds from the theming, it can be a little overbearing at times. At number 22, we have Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. Though I was not impressed with Knott's, Ghost Rider was a great GCI Woodie. The first drop has an amazing combination of ejector and laterals, and the camelback afterwards had great floater. The turnaround then had more amazing laterals before the trip back towards the station with more lateral airtime. The train then does a high unbanked turn over the station with more phenomenal laterals, and it ends with a great pop of ejector. It then enters a lap through the structure with more airtime and laterals before a massive helix at the end that doesn't have very sharp banking, so the ride feels like it's going to tear you in half as you're pressed to the side of the seat. All of the valleys have good forces and the trains are super comfortable, plus the interaction with the structure is great. But, speaking of trying to tear you in half, at number 21 we have Wonder Woman Golden Lasso Coaster at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. This RMC Raptor is absolutely crazy. I will say when I rode it last year, the trains were the old generation and were terrible, but the ride is still amazing. The first drop had amazing ejector airtime, and the Raven turn was very whippy. I love the serpentine maneuver, and there is a very snappy corkscrew, plus other good pops of airtime throughout the course. The twisted hill also has phenomenal lateral airtime, and like I said, the pacing is just perfect on this ride. Staying at Fiesta, Texas, we have Iron Rattler at number 20. First of all, these are my favorite RMC trains. They are so open and comfortable with the great restraints. Then you have the amazing first drop with whippy airtime and great forces, plus laterals in the pullouts. The wave turns don't do too much, but are smooth and floaty. Then you have the power as it dives off the cliff wall with more power before whipping into a barrel roll and entering the top of the cliff wall again, with pretty good speed when I rode it. And it has some nice floaty pops on the elements on the top. The second drop off the cliff wall to me isn't as good as the first drop, but the forces when you are in the cliff wall are great, and the unbanking into the brake run is crazy. The ride is fun, but not as crazy or good as the other 20. At number 19, we have Sandy's Blasting Bronco at Nickelodeon Universe and the American Dream Mall. The ride is short but sweet. The trains are very comfortable as they are the new Gen Blitz restraints on the older generation trains, so the lower to the ground, smaller ones. The launches are the punchiest magnetic launches I've ever experienced, and the forces on the pull-ups are great. There's great hang time on both the backwards and forwards laps, but also whip. And again, that backwards launch is amazing and insane. My issue with the ride is it has a pretty nasty rattle and is kind of short. At number 18, we have El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. For context, I rode this in June of 2021, and the ride opened very late in the day due to work on the structure and track, so the ride was kind of rough, but I excused it at the time because it's a Woodie, and an intense one at that. The first drop in the back has amazing whip and laterals, plus phenomenal airtime. Then there's the back-to-back camelbacks with more amazing airtime, before the turnaround with great forces. The train then traverses more airtime hills with more powerful airtime before the rolling thunder hill that absolutely drags you over it. Then there's the twister section, which has good whip and gets really close to the ground before two ending pops. The ride was rough, but so powerful and fun with amazing forces throughout the valleys, so I ignored the roughness for the most part. At number 17, we have Jersey Devil Coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure. This isn't as crazy as the Prototype Raptors, but it's still fun. The drop has amazing airtime, and the Raven turn has great whip, as does the turn above the station. The inversions are floaty with some whip, and the final run of airtime hills are amazing with great mix of traditional and off-axis hills. The trains are also more comfortable due to the moving soft straps. At number 16, we have RE Force 1 at Fun Spot Atlanta. This RMC has pretty comfortable trains with amazing pacing. The first drop and Raven turn don't do too much, but the lateral airtime hill has amazing lateral airtime. And the stall has great hang time as well. The outer bank turn has amazing laterals and airtime, and the double up has more great ejector airtime. The barrel rolls are amazingly whippy, and the off-axis hill has more whippy airtime, before the quad down finale with great flowjector pops. Although the ride wasn't running at its best when I rode it on a cool morning and only got one ride on it, it was still really fun. At number 15, we have Tron Light Cycle Run at the Magic Kingdom. The ride was fun and the launch was punchy, but it wasn't a crazy ride and it was short. But the queue and theming were amazing and the trains were super comfortable and the bouncing knee pads helped with the ride. Like I said, I was absolutely blown away by the launch and there were actually floaty airtime pops ascending and descending from the brake runs. The outdoor theming was nice and inside was decent as well, plus it pulled decent forces and had some laterals. Overall, it was a very smooth and fun, plus a unique ride that surprised me. At number 14, we have Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. This is one coaster that many consider to be the best of its kind, and while it is great, it's not my personal favorite B&M Hyper. The ride has an amazing first drop with great sustained floater, and the first turn actually has great whip and occasionally an airtime pop. The Camelback has amazing flowjector airtime, and the Hammerhead turn has great whip. The Trim Hill actually has phenomenal airtime when the trim hits, and the hill with the turn has great airtime plus whip, and the Speed Hill also has great airtime. Then there's a good pop going into and some whip going out of the mid-course. The Camelback afterwards has good floater, and the final two wave turns have some good pops before the nice swooping curve into the brakes. I really enjoy Mako. It has some great elements and is very comfortable, but the airtime and forces aren't as strong as the other two Hypers. At number 13, we have Diamondback at Kings Island. This B&M Hyper is the perfect example of re-rides make the difference. I first rode this coaster in 2021 and thought it was terrible, but this year the ride was running great. The ride has an amazing first drop with airtime and laterals plus forces. Then there's a bunch of amazing Camelbacks with great flow ejector airtime, and then there's the amazing turnaround with great whip. Both helixes have amazing forces and great airtime in the ending hill, plus a nice aesthetic on the splashdown. The trains are super comfortable with the amazing restraints as well, and they're pretty well themed. At number 12, we have Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. This is an amazing hyper hybrid with absolutely insane forces and great airtime. The first drop has amazing sustained ejector, and the first pullout has great forces, plus there is amazing whip and airtime on the outer bank. Then there's the phenomenal death roll with great ejector airtime and whip, and then there's the whippiness of the overbank turn afterwards. Then you have the phenomenal sideways airtime through the wave turn over the station, with amazing whip as well. Then you have the little hop up and another wave turn, plus the floaty stall, which all have good airtime or hang time and whip. Plus there's good forces in all the valleys between these elements. Then you have the whippy hill and the trick track double down with amazing whip and airtime that drags you around before a very forceful turn and one more phenomenally powerful small Camelback before one last whippy and forceful turn into the brakes. Every valley has power, every transition has whip, every hill has insane airtime, and the ride isn't repetitive. Plus, it absolutely flippin' hauls through the layout, and still has a ton of speed into the brakes. The ride is dang near perfect, but I don't know why. I just can't justify ranking it higher than where it is. I guess I just enjoy the other 11 that are above it, and get to ride most of them less than this one. For number 11, we jump to the other Busch Gardens and have Pantheon. This is a very short Intamib Blitz coaster with not much theming, which is what keeps it out of the top 10, but in its short layout, it is amazing. The first launch has an amazing punch into a 0G winder with amazing hang time. Then a relatively forceful turn into two outer banked hills that have a little whip and are floaty. Then it whippily rolls over a switch track. You then enter the post launch where the ride punctually accelerates and rolls over an airtime hill with some floater before engaging the second part of the launch punctually again and pulling up into the top hat before twisting, and then the train rolls back down and enters the backwards launch insanely punctually before rolling over the airtime hill backwards with an absolutely insane pop of ejector airtime. It is amazing how crazy it is. The train then slams into the spike before you get a nice floater airtime pop. You then pull out and fly over the airtime hill again with more insane airtime before slamming into the pull-up of the top hat and twisting into the crest with amazing floater. The train then dives down the beyond vertical drop, strengthening the airtime to sustained ejector before slamming into a forceful valley. The train then pulls up and banks left before turning right in a massive outer banked airtime hill with an amazing slantways airtime. The train then pulls out and goes into a poppy turn to the right before pulling up into a stall with amazing hang time before whipping out and flying under the top hat with an amazing head chopper. It then flies over a little S-bend with phenomenal whip. The train then pulls up and whips into a final wave turn with great airtime before whipping down into the brakes. The trains on this are amazing and help the ride experience as they are so open. And the reverse launch airtime hill, top hat, and outer bank are absolutely phenomenal elements. To kick off the top 10, we have Thunderhead at Dollywood. This is the third GCI Woodie on the list, and it is more of a twister style layout. The ride is packed with great laterals and positive forces, then you have the amazing pops of ejector. The ride actually looks really cool, kind of looming over a wildwood grove, and the ride absolutely hauls. And it's cool how it flies through the station and interacts with the queue. And the ride is absolutely amazing at night, even in the front row. I feel that the back row is probably the better road for the daytime, but the front is easily the best road during the night. And I rode this when it was freezing cold, so the fact that the ride was still running this fast just makes it all the more better. At number 9, we have Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. This is the final GCI Woodie on the list, and it's amazing. The first drop has great whip and airtime before a forceful and lateral pullout due to the twisted nature of it. The train then pops up into a high-up, turning double down with a couple quick pops of ejector. Then you have the amazing run of airtime hills with lateral airtime twisting this way and that before a forceful turnaround in a tunnel. Then you have the crazy run of airtime hills back towards the station. And at the end, the mediocre shed. The ride setting in the middle of the woods, coupled with the bumpy nature of the coaster, makes it feel like an actual runaway truck. Though it is slightly bumpy, the ride is also very smooth for a Woodie. At number 8, we have Millennium Force at Cedar Point. This Intamin Giga coaster is absolutely hauling this year. The ride, first of all, has some of the most comfortable coaster trains on the planet, with the amazing low-to-the-ground seating and minimalistic T-bar restraints, and the ride is just absolutely freeing. Then you have that beautiful climb to the top up the 310-foot lift with a spectacular view of the park and Lake Erie. Once the train dives off the lift with an amazing pop of sustained floater, it then pulls up in a forceful pull-out and overbank turn. The train then rockets through a tunnel with more good forces before ascending into a massive airtime hill with some of the best sustained floater airtime I've ever experienced. The two turns in the back half of the layout have some good forces and a nice setting among the trees. You then rocket over another floater airtime hill parallel to the first one with more amazing sustained floater airtime. The train then rockets through a powerful low to the ground turn to the right through a tunnel. Afterwards, it then flies by the station over a low to the ground bunny hop, providing more powerful airtime. The train then executes one more floaty turn before hitting the final brakes, still absolutely flying. This ride is so smooth and comfortable, and it's amazing, but not crazy enough to beat the other 7. At number 7, we have Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. Now, this probably just angered a lot of people, having Copperhead over Toro, Gwazi, even Millennium Force. But let me tell you, this Mack multi-launch is small, but it's just a crap ton of fun. The ride starts off with a bang with the JoJo roll straight out of the station with amazing hang time before a pretty well-themed pre-launch show scene. The launch is weak some years and decent others, so it just kind of depends on when you ride. But afterwards, the train slams into a vertical loop with insane positive G-forces. As it's coasting through the vertical loop, at the top you have amazing insane hang time before it pulls out forcefully. The train then whips into a phenomenal corkscrew with amazing whip before forcefully entering a tight camelback with amazing ejector airtime. The train then goes through some low-to-the-ground twists and turns with amazing whip and direction changes and phenomenal forces in the valleys. The train then drags riders into the second launch with phenomenal whip and airtime. The second launch has a decent punch and a good pop of airtime on the mid-launch airtime hill and step-up. The train then pulls up very forcefully into an inverting top hat with phenomenal hang time before pulling out forcefully again and entering a super snappy turn and then a quick vertical loop, and then flies into a sharp hill with amazing ejector before whipping into a tight turn and then another snappy transition that is just amazing. The back half of the course is full of tight helices and more snappy transitions before a couple of ending hops with insane ejector airtime, and laterals, plus positives. The ride has amazingly comfortable seats and restraints, coupled with a phenomenal airtime, hangtime, whip, and positives. At number 6, we have Thunder Striker, also at Carowinds. This is a phenomenal B&M Hyper and easily the best I've ever experienced from this model. The first drop had amazing sustained flojector airtime. The train then slams riders back down in a very forceful pullout before ascending into a half hill, half turn with amazing sustained floater and whip before another forceful valley. The train then flies into a massive camelback with amazing sustained floater before it transitions to sustained ejector on the descent. The train then whips up into a snappy turnaround before another camelback on the return trip, similar to the previous, only smaller. Then comes another smaller camelback, again with similar feelings to the other two. The train then enters a low-to-the-ground turn before popping up into the mid-course with another strong airtime pop. After the train dives off the mid-course and then rises up, it turns and dives again. Both drops have amazing sustained ejector. The train then flies into a massive helix that dives down and then rises back up, pulling amazing positives and laterals. The train unbanks and dives down with an amazing pop of airtime before rising up and popping down into the final break with a strong airtime pop. The trains are comfortable, of course, as they have the clamshells, and the ride is pretty smooth as well. To kick off the top 5, we have X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This is an insane Aero 4th Dimension coaster, and one of the most insane coasters I've ever ridden. The ride starts off with a little drop before the seats flip and riders are facing straight down while plunging down the massive drop. This is such an odd sensation as you don't feel like you are actually restrained and are just falling straight to the ground. The seats flip upright and the train pulls out with an amazing display of positive G-forces. The train then pulls up into a Raven turn and the seats rotate with a nice floaty sensation. The train then dives down and pulls up into an airtime hill where the seats traverse a full rotation and a crazy somersaulting sensation. The train then traverses a high turn, pulling more good forces. It then goes over a partial airtime hill, but at the top twists, and so does the seats, so that riders are now traveling in reversed as Flyer blasts around them. The train then traverses a reverse Raven turn, pulling phenomenal positive forces before rotating around and into the final brakes, ending the ride. The ride is short and a little rough, but it is so insane and by far the most out of control coaster I've ever ridden. Up at number 4, we have Maverick at Cedar Point. This is an insane Intamin Blitz coaster. The ride starts off with a nice inclined launch before boosting riders down the 95-degree drop with amazing ejector airtime and laterals before it pulls out forcefully into a tight right turn. The train then flies into a rock formation before going through 2 back-to-back S-bends with amazing whip and small ejector pops. The train then unbanks and enters a camelback with amazing ejector airtime before going through 2 rolls with a turn in between that have amazing whip in the rolls and forces in the turns. The train then flies into a tunnel under the station and slows to a crawl before lights flash and the train takes off with amazing force and accelerates to 70 miles per hour. After the launch, the track whips left with amazing forces and ascends before exiting the tunnel and unbanking into a set of trims. The track then dives down in a swooping right turn with great forces over a lake before another amazing heartline roll like the Mosasaurus Huh? Oh, wait. Right. That was chopped into little pieces and sold for $300. 1 second. The train enters another snappy S-bend with another good ejector pop before pulling up and whipping riders sideways in a stangle dive with phenomenal whip and airtime. The train then turns and enters another stangle dive, this time to the left, with even more insane whip and airtime. The train then traverses one last airtime hill before turning into the brakes. The ride is so whippy and fun, though the trains are a bit uncomfortable. At number 3, we have Fury 325 at Carowinds. This B&M Giga is running absolutely insane this year. The first drop has phenomenal sustained ejector as the train just feels like it's falling forever before it slams into the pull-up with amazing positive G-forces. The train then whips up into a high turn that has strong floater at the top before diving down and whipping into 2 insane sideways turns with amazing flow ejector airtime. The train then flies into the amazing turnaround called the Treble Clef with amazing forces in the entry, and then the sideways exit that unbanks and dives down with amazing sustained ejector airtime. The train pulls out forcefully through an amazing tunnel, especially at night. It then flies into another turn with more amazing whip and airtime. The train then flies into a small camelback with amazing sustained ejector before flying into a helix that has decent forces with a good head chopper moment. It then traverses another camelback with amazing flowjector airtime before a forceful turn to the left and another camelback with more flowjector. The train then traverses one final right turn before it pulls up into the final brakes with another great pop of airtime. The ride is amazing with great trains and phenomenal speed coupled with the phenomenal forces. At number 2, we have Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. This Mack Extreme Spinner is another one of the most insane coasters I've been on. The ride starts off with an insane vertical drop straight out of the station. Then you have a hang time filled dive loop and switchbacks before slowing into the first launch, which is actually pretty punchy and whippy. The train then traverses a high turn with either hang time or air time depending on which way you are facing. It then glides into a hang time filled vertical loop that is fun, especially sideways, because you get to see the park upside down. The train then traverses a crazy twisted hill with phenomenal whip and air time before a forceful low turn hugging the hillside. Then there's the amazingly whippy corkscrew before the sharp airtime hill with an amazing airtime pop into another punchy launch, into two final turns with great hang time and forces in between. The trains and restraints are the most comfortable I've ever experienced, and the spinning just adds odd sensations and forces to the ride, plus it's pretty smooth. And for my number 1 roller coaster 4 years running, we have the Jurassic World Velocicoaster at Universal Islands of Adventure. This ride is just amazing. It starts off with a cool pre-launch show scene before an amazingly punchy launch into a forceful pull-up into an Immelman that has good whip at the top, and then a dive loop with amazing hang time. The train then flies through some tight turns and hills with phenomenal whip and laterals, plus good airtime pops on the hills. That twister section in the paddock has great head and hand choppers because of the phenomenal rock work, and then the train makes a forceful right turn and accelerates into the second launch, which is amazingly punchy before slamming into the massive top hat. After the forceful pull-up, the train whips out and crests, and the world just feels like it stops as you are lifted out of your seat. The train then flies down the top hat, whipping you over before pulling out forcefully and displaying the speed by whipping into an amazing 0G stall. The train then flies into the double helix with great forces and airtime on the wave turn, plus amazing whip and airtime on the outer banked hill. The train then travels over a powerful airtime hill with an ejector pop over the lake in the middle. The train then flies into the amazing Mosasaurus roll with phenomenal whip and upside down airtime before entering the final twisting double up with amazing ejector pops and whip throughout the whole element. The theming and setting of the ride is amazing, plus you have the amazingly comfortable restraints in the overhead lap bars, which are, again, very freeing, and the trains themselves look absolutely amazing. Plus, you have the amazing queue, and the ride is visible from all over the Jurassic Park area. But that closes out 2024, and those are my top 25 rankings from this year. I've had a pretty interesting year coaster-wise. Gotten to visit a lot of parks, but didn't get to ride much new stuff. Although I did get tons of re-rides on some of my old favorite coasters and were reminded how good some of them are. But I hope you all enjoyed the video and let me know what you think of my list. But that's all for this time, and we'll see you all next time on another adventure.